Hi everyone, I'm Carlo. I would like to share with you my slides and my presentation and my report on Tavella and Alberto Franco's paper on the dynamics of group knowledge production and facilitated modeling workshops, an exploratory study. So this will be my agenda for the entire presentation. I'd like to give everyone a motivation and then also cover what are the gaps in existing literature when it comes to group knowledge production and also with facilitated modeling, specifically in workshops, and what did Tavella and Alberto Franco create and write about as a response towards this gap. And also, I'd like to give a quick review on the main points of the paper. And also, moving forward, how can we expand, Tavella and Alberto Franco's notions towards facilitated modeling and also group knowledge production? Just to give you a quick motivation, I'd like everyone to go to this bit.ly link wherein you will share your ideas of ideal groups, of ideal facilitators, of ideal participants. And in that case, also reverse it back. What are the descriptions of a group that is not ideal, of a facilitator that is not ideal, and also of a participant that is not ideal. So I want to generate this conversation towards creating a shared knowledge of redefining what ideal groups mean or what do they qualify for. But then again, if it would be of more benefit to the class, to the students of this class, it would also be a topic in the asynchronous discussion for this week. I also generated this semantic word cloud that, according to Tavella and Alberto Franco's paper, these are the top 10 words that they frequently used in the entire essay. So it covers interactions, modeling, group, pattern, VSM or viable system model, participants, workshop, facilitated, production, and knowledge. So if we are to also look into what they also intend to create, they want to see how the interactions of different participants create or produce knowledge in a facilitated model, which is the workshop. They also used Haridimos Tusuka's viable system model, which ensures or which takes into looking operational units and making them autonomous and seeing how groups deal with conflicts of interest. So what is the gap in the existing literature? According to Tavella and Alberto Franco, there exists deep and rich literature on the application of facilitated modeling and how it influences the facilitator, the participant, or both. But then again, there's also this gap between what actually happens inside a workshop. How do facilitators and participants interact with each other? And therefore, what kind of behaviors and what kind of strategies do they employ in the creation or the production of knowledge? So their response was to create a micro-level analysis of facilitated modeling within a workshop to see how participants and facilitators interact with one another, how they play when it comes to, or how they navigate within different power structures. And so this is the main focus of their entire paper. According to them, facilitated modeling, in this case the workshop, is also focusing on the creation or the production of knowledge. And this production of knowledge is taking into account different forms of conceptualization. That concepts can be combined. Say, for example, 2 or more concepts can be combined to create knowledge, or expand concepts into their traditional or usual definitions of themselves and expanding it to different contexts, and therefore also producing new knowledge. You can also reframe concepts to reclassify a concept or reclassify an object, and therefore also create new knowledge. But also they look into either fixing concepts or demarcating concepts, in the sense that you make concepts non-negotiable, or you limit the concept with no signs of building it, and therefore producing a specific type of knowledge. They also look into engagement. Engagement in the sense that participants between themselves, and also participants and the facilitator, might also be relational, in the sense that you can openly comment on each other's works and maintain social relationships. Or it can also be calculated, in the sense that facilitators may create a calculated form of engagement with the participants by protecting their own positions, or maximizing gain, or also protecting their power image. And lastly, Tavella and Alberto Franco also looked into the different patterns of facilitated modeling, and therefore that the different types of patterns, which I will therefore explain in a bit, if it's generative, collaborative, or assertive, can also form different forms of knowledge. And these three things, concepts, engagement, and patterns, is also looked into the paper that Tavella and Alberto Franco created. And so the main question is, what happens within a facilitated modeling, and how do those factors affect the type or quality of knowledge being produced? This was answered to us by Tavella and Alberto Franco by saying that if we employ different forms of behavior, say for example in the generative pattern, you can also create, you can also create a different form or a specific form of knowledge. And that if participants collaborate with one another, they can also create, in this case, not new, but built upon common knowledge. And on the other hand, if the pattern is assertive, and therefore employing this specific behavior, such as deploy authority, reify, challenge, or reiterate, it produces old knowledge. It's really interesting to see how Tavella and Alberto Franco was able to take into account the different behaviors that are being deployed by the participants and the facilitator, and in that case also contribute to defining what specific pattern was present in that part of the workshop. So say for example, generative forms create new knowledge, but also relational engagements. For collaborative patterns, you may not be able to produce new knowledge, but you could also create relational engagements. And assertive forms or assertive patterns of facilitated modeling, you create a calculated form of engagement, but also you do not create new knowledge. And for the dialogue, it goes both ways. For generative and collaborative, that productive dialogue is being created, whereas in assertive forms of knowledge production, an unproductive form of dialogue is being practiced. So what's really interesting for me is that across generative, collaborative, and assertive patterns of knowledge production, challenge is present, is omnipresent. But therefore, there are different methods or different approaches towards challenging ideas. So say for example, why does it happen that even though generative and collaborative patterns of knowledge production challenge ideas, and assertive as well, why does generative and collaborative create new knowledge or shared knowledge, but for assertive patterns of knowledge production, old knowledge is being produced? And so, which also reminds me of this framework that they also proposed, that it it takes into account the relationships between the participants and the facilitators, and how it produces specific types of knowledge, and they are looking into the behaviors that participants and facilitators create in the production of knowledge, and whether it leads towards new or existing knowledge. it also reminds me of this framework given by Stephen Covey, that according to him, we have circles of influence that if we're given a challenge, this in the and this challenge, sorry, is within our circle of influence, we can then take into account, you know, what we can do to ensure that that challenge is being addressed. So, however, if we look into circles of concern, this specific problem is beyond our reach and therefore also beyond our influence. So what can these types of problems be? So say for example, if you are a teacher and your student is failing, your circle of influence might be like, what can I do to ensure that this student and his concerns are being addressed? So you can interview him, you can ask him, you can visit his home, etc., or talk to his parent, to ask and investigate what happens within a learner. But it takes it, but the problem will then be a circle of concern if you look into um, different policies, like beyond your concern, or how the entire public education system is created or structured. So those are things that a teacher could not directly influence. So what can we do to ensure that it will lead towards productive things? Proactive people are becoming responsible for actions, not conditions. So what they do is, they create a more productive attack towards challenges if they expand their influence from the circle of influence towards the circle of concern. However, if the problems in the circle of concern envelop them and eat them up, and also limiting their influence, like because of this assessment or because of this policy I could not influence this child, it also becomes a reactive form of behavior or mindset, and therefore you also neglect the issues under your own control and influence. So in this case, you also try to dismiss challenges and not address challenges in the way that productive people do. So moving forward, I'd like to ask, these questions that were not covered by Tavella or Belda Franco. First one is, does culture, age, gender, or socioeconomic status affect the participants' behavior exhibited in a group interaction? So say, for example, I'm an international student. My culture is different from most of my classmates, etc. Does this affect the way I interact with them? Is there existing research that sees culture, age, gender, or socioeconomic status as factors that really affect the way dialogues are being produced or interactions are being created? The second one is, how will Tusuka's notion of productive dialogue be applied in other forms and platforms of facilitated modeling? So as we expand and as we navigate into different forms of knowledge production and facilitated modeling, such as virtual platforms or probably lectures or brainstorming, how will Tsuka's notion of productive dialogue still apply, or will it be different, or will it also create the same forms of behavior? I want to find that out. And then another one is, what strategies can be employed before, during, and after the conduct of a workshop to ensure a productive dialogue and the creation of new and shared knowledge? So in this world wherein knowledge is primarily being more of a social construct, and therefore an output of collaborations and contributions from different views, from different perspectives, I want to see what we can do to ensure that prior to the engagement of the workshop, you're already prepared, you already want to invite people, you already want to address their concerns and also be more open rather than being assertive. What can you do? What specific strategy or method or approach can you actually practice before, during? So say for example, a participant challenge you and it's a really challenging situation for you to be put in that spotlight. what can you do to ensure that that question or that reaction is being addressed? And after the workshop, what can you do as a facilitator or as a participant to ensure that the dialogue keeps on being productive and that knowledge is also still constantly being built upon one another. So I want to see, I want to ask these questions, given that Tusukas and, Tavella and Alberto Franco was not able to cover these questions up. So this is my report for systems change and learning. And I do hope everyone will have a productive discussion during the week. Thank you very much.